welcome again. And I just wanted to highlight that I'd like you all to put your name, where you're from in Ohio. And then, if you have a question, that is a great place to throw it in. And that way, as Mary and TC are going through, their ideas and their tips, they'll have an idea of the kinds of questions as we go along. Now, we have plenty of time during this training for discussion, for questions. And I have to tell you, I'm just really grateful that we're all here. I think there are lots of different ways to raise your voice, let people know where you're coming from. And for many of us, we're getting ready to march to the State House next Wednesday. We'll meet at 12:30 at the Episcopal Church that's on the corner of Broad and Third. It's basically kitty corner from the Senate building. What we're going to do is we're going to march over to the Senate building. We'll walk through the Senate building to the map room. In the map room, we're all going to find, our home counties and then stand on that. Let's say it's Scioto County or it's Franklin County or it's Hamilton County. We'll stand on a county and say why it is that we care about this attack on direct democracy, why it is that we care about our right to go to the ballot. And then what we'll do is, you'll have your picture taken because obviously we want to be able to capture the moment. Then we'll work our way over to the House chamber for the vote. And so that's the plan for next Wednesday. And today is all about getting our voice out by expressing what we're thinking to the community. And I'm just really grateful that we are joined by two amazing experts. So former editorial editor, Mary Yost, and former reporter and, wonderful communications expert, beautiful writer, TC Brown. And so with that, I'm going to start us off. Welcome again. Please put your name, where you're from into the chat. If you have any questions, throw that in the chat as well. A big welcome. I'm Catherine Turser from Common Cause, Ohio, and we are going to get started first with Dennis Willard. I'm going to go through our agenda here. So first on the agenda, welcome. I'm just glad that we're here and are spending our time thinking about how to be thoughtful about letters to the editor, op-eds. I think it's so important for us to be communicating with those folks in our community who don't really know about this issue and need a little bit more information. I'm also going to include kind of a quick update about, what's happening at the State House. I kind of started with that as well. But I thought it's important for you all to know kind of where we are in the process. And then we're on to Mary Yost and TC Brown. Then there's time for questions and discussion. And once again, use the chat. Let us know what you're thinking, what your questions are, where you're from. And with that, Dennis, are you ready? I'd like to introduce you to Dennis Willard, who's also a former reporter. Dennis has been working really hard with us on coming up with good messaging guidance. Dennis is with We Are Ohio. And with that, Dennis, are you ready to take it away and explain the messaging guidance?
Yes, and thanks for having me here today. I also want to say hi to Mary and TC, and thank you so much for being involved in this. As you both know, Mike Curtin, the former editor and associate publisher and two-term state lawmaker and member of the Ohio Constitutional Modernization Commission, has also been very helpful. There's a group of State House reporters called the Ohio Legislative Correspondents Association. We're all former members of that, and it's really good to be getting the band back together and fighting the good fight. What I want you to know is that what we're doing here is you'll see that two of these three legs of the message triangle are negative. If we go to the ballot, and we're trying to avoid that, but if we do go to the ballot in August, we will be the no vote. It will be state issue 1. So eventually we'll move this from to a messaging of no on issue 1 or no on state issue 1, because they kind of have locked themselves in if they do that. But please keep in mind, we are not giving up. The reason we have a day of action next Wednesday is because we killed this in lame duck. We stopped them from passing something in January to be on the May ballot. and we're still fighting like crazy to keep this off of the special election in August. With that in mind, we are saying no on HJR1, no on SJR2, no to a special August election. Those are all sort of like the messaging of that. Also saying, on a positive way, protect one person, one vote. This is standing up for your rights. A messaging starts with a frame, and our frame is, and think of the frame as being a piece of bread. If you're making a sandwich, that laying down that piece of bread, you're going to always have that bread. You're always going to start by saying, this is unfair, undemocratic, unpopular, or unnecessary. Choose one of those if you want to, but please always state that this is unfair, undemocratic, unpopular, unnecessary. Then we go to how we build that sandwich. And what we're putting on that sandwich is this messaging you're looking at here. This undermines the sacred principle of one person, one vote. That's really important. It's a sacred principle we have here, that our vote counts as one. They want to end majority rule in Ohio as we know it. They want to block things with just 41% of the voters. That's a small amount. And they want to block initiatives that a majority, 50+1, and democracy is 50+1, they want. This shreds our Constitution. This messaging comes from our work with a group called the Fairness Project. They did polling. They worked in states where they defeated these measures, like in Arkansas and South Dakota. And they in Arizona, and Arizona threshold. Also takes away your right to happen. That is one leg of the message triangle. The second one is talking about our freedoms and our rights. This protects our freedom to determine our future. We all want that freedom to make decisions that affect our lives. This takes away your right to decide what happens. And ballot initiatives, constitutional ballot initiatives, let us exercise that freedom. So there's the empowerment of our message. And again, this is like lettuce, tomato, is and unnecessary. And always you need to have, sort of a foil, a boogeyman. And in this case, they have given us ample opportunity to point out how bad they are. We want to talk about extreme out of touch politicians. If we go to the ballot in order to win, we're going to have a diverse voter group. This has to be nonpartisan or bipartisan. If you notice, even the colors on our branding and logo are not one party or another. We need to get Republicans, Independents, and Democrats to join us in defeating this, because this affects all of us. So we're not using the R word if we can avoid it. But this is really about politicians, like the decisions we've made. They want to write rules so they can get what they want instead of what the people want. This is special interest and lobbyists are pushing the constitutional amendment because they can control politicians, but they can't control you, me, and others. And getting rid of constitutional ballots means more power for them and less power for voters to decide the issues that matter most. If you stick to these talking points, variations of these talking points, then you're going to, and I know that Democrats are often accused of not having a message, and progressives are accused of not having a message. Well, we have a message here. The key here is to have message discipline, to stay on message. And I know that Mary and TC are going to help you understand how best to write to the editor, but you can also send these same emails to your local lawmaker, asking them to stand up and protect one person, one vote. I'll be glad to answer any questions, and otherwise I'm going to turn it over to the professionals on here.
Well, thank you, Dennis. Do any of you have questions about this guidance? All right, well, we are going to turn this over. Let's move it along then.
Oh.
Let's see. Oh, Tiffany, do you have a
Does it
question?
said, yeah, so in the chat it says, can we identify the opposition as the ruling minority? Who who do we name specifically? Do we just say politicians, or who do we say?
Well, the leading proponents of this effort are Secretary of State Frank LaRose. I can call him out. State Representative Brian Stewart, you can call him out. I think those are the people that we have focused on the most. Keep in mind, this is a lost cause in the Senate. Matt Huffman, we're not going to change minds there, nor do we have the ability to change the vote. The place where we can change this is in the Ohio House. So
Okay.
I would, if you're going to be calling out anybody specifically, I would do Frank LaRose.
Thanks, that's helpful.
And then also, I would say extreme politicians. Because we have Republican and Democratic lawmakers on our side. So we don't want to necessarily knock lawmakers in general, because then we're sort of like hitting the folks who are supporting us and working on our behalf in the legislature. But we do want to say extreme politicians.
Yep.
Obvious.
It's great. Thank you.
Dennis, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
So one of the things, that I discovered very early in this attack on direct democracy was that there were so many people who didn't know what direct democracy was. And so, one of the things that I think is useful is to have the background and to understand kind of the history of the ballot, and it can help for guidance. But in many ways, direct democracy isn't something that people always get. But we can talk about, about voter power, about the voters being able to be a check on the state legislature. That in fact, in 1912, the voters of Ohio approved changes to the Ohio Constitution to allow us to referendum, propose laws to allow us to put votes directly before voters. And I think it's really important to realize that we have been conservative about this. The last time that we had a citizen initiative on the ballot was in 2018. It was not successful. The last successful one was in 2017. That was Marcy's Law, and that was about victims' rights. And so, we can think about that part of things, that it's unnecessary, right? Unfair, unnecessary, and undemocratic. It's clearly unnecessary because citizen initiatives have not run rampant. What we do know is that, when it comes to 60% of the vote, getting 60% of the vote is a real hurdle. And so the example I included in here was in 2006 when it came to minimum wage. Now, we would say that 56.65% of the vote is strong support for the minimum wage. But to get to 60% and beyond is a real challenge. The other thing that I think that is really important to think about is, the citizen power and voting power, that in fact, this is an attack on voters' rights. And so even though the referendum is not part of this, it's important to think about this as an attack on the Constitution, shredding the rules that we've had in place, for more than 100 years, but it really is an attack on voters. And I think as we move forward, I think it's worth thinking a little bit about history. So one historical fact that I think is important that you might want to include is that the first and only time there was a state legislative referred ballot measure on an August special election was in 1926. This is really unusual. And, we all know the reasons for that. People don't show up to the polls. They don't vote in these special elections. So it is genuinely a problem. The other thing to keep in mind is there are protections in the Ohio Constitution. And the reason I want to highlight the protections in the Ohio Constitution is that there are rules essentially putting in place a process where the ballot board, looks at measures and identifies, well, is this a monopoly? Is it an oligopoly? I love that word. It's hard to say. Oligopoly. Are we talking about a cartel? Is there an exclusive financial benefit or a preferential tax status? That there's a process. And then voters are asked, like if the ballot board determines this, the ballot board that then puts on 2 votes. One has to do, are you willing to put this monopoly into the Ohio Constitution? And the next one is, do you approve this? And let's face it, most of us would be very, very, very leery about giving special preferential treatment. And, this was an appropriate response to what happened with the casinos. And that was in 2015. So, one of the things I think is important is to think about, well, they're acting like this is so darn necessary. Oh my God, we're under attack. And some of the nonsense, this is all about, woke people trying to change the Ohio Constitution. Okay. Now, for many of us, we have actually collected signatures. So I'm going to encourage you to raise your hand, put in the chat if you are somebody who's collected signatures for a citizen ballot measure. And it may be this year. I'm going to raise my hand. Maybe this year, it may have been in previous years when we worked on redistricting. I see Bill Woods. Hi, Bill. And Bill Davis, sorry. Mia's got her hand up. There are a bunch of folks that are like, hey, I've worked on this. Debbie Dulke. The thing that I think is so important is how hard it is to do these citizen-led ballot measures. It's incredibly challenging to get enough signatures. And even though we've really focused on, the 60% vote, it's really important if you're somebody who collected signatures to think about the other things that are in House Joint Resolution 1 or Senate Joint Resolution 2. Okay, 5% of the last gubernatorial vote in 44 of 88 counties, it's a hurdle. It's not unmanageable. And it's a way to be sure that their folks, their voters all over the state that are interested in this issue. It's a reasonable requirement. All 88 counties moving 5% of the gubernatorial vote from 44 of 88 to all 88. That is a significant hurdle. The hurdle that I think could, in fact, make it so that folks completely avoid citizen initiatives is the elimination of the cure period. Now, this happens. I was going to say in 2012 with Voters First, we did not have enough signatures. So this was a redistricting reform measure to put an independent redistricting commission on the ballot. Basically what happens is you do everything you can to ensure that you have enough valid signatures to be, but people move and people sadly die and things happen. And so those signatures get stale and you submit them and sometimes people don't know what county they live in. And like there are a bunch of different things that go wrong with it. And so having the ability to have 10 days to quickly collect additional signatures is incredibly important. I mean, just imagine if you were off by 1 signature or 10 signatures and this is removed. This is very, very harsh. Now, are there folks that do have questions or things they would like to add about that? All right, well, I want to say a big thank you to all of you who collected signatures in the past, all of you who are here on this. Oh, Carol, you have your hand up. Is there something you'd like to ask?
Yes. If we, in both the letter and if it comes to it and we have to go door to door, should we avoid mentioning the abortion issue?
So one of the things that we do know is that, of course, this attack is about abortion. On the other hand, this attack affects all the issues. It impacts all the issues. And so clearly, if we're having conversations with folks we are going to end up talking about abortion because they are going after this to stop the reproductive rights. So it's just going to happen kind of naturally. But I think what's important is that we're all very clear that this isn't just about folks that want to have reproductive rights. This isn't just about choice or pro-life. This is not a proxy for that. This is an attack on our ability to go directly to voters. It's an attack on our ability to do redistricting reform, for example. It's an attack on the ability to set minimum wage. So I think it's important for us to keep our eye on the prize, that in fact, this will make it harder, not just, in 2023, but 2033, for example, 2043. It certainly is an attack on all progressive kinds of ballot measures. And I always find it really hard to think about redistricting reform as a progressive ballot measure, because at the end of the day, we should all want fair elections, and that should be bipartisan, nonpartisan. We should all care about it. But I think it's important for us to communicate that we care about how this is a real attack. And Jody was highlighting it's an attack on victims' rights. Now, Bill Davis, I'm glad to see you. Do you have a question or have a suggestion?
Well, I was wondering if we know where the money's coming from that's trying to hamstring direct democracy in Ohio.
So some of that is not clear. Before I got on this phone call, I had a reporter who explained that they were trying to track down some dark money that was related to this attack. I think we're going to learn more and more about it. But what we can do is hold the folks accountable who are promoting this. And I know Dennis was talking, highlighting, we don't use the R word, but we can identify the humans. We can identify specifically, Secretary of State LaRose. He is the chief elections official who's playing around with our votes. And we can identify, Rob Culley, we can Teresa Gavarone. I've been saying legislative leaders, realizing that there are also other legislative leaders, but that's how I've been talking about it. But yes, we will be learning more and more about the dark money that's going on. And we should expect, if we actually do have to go to the ballot, that a lot of money will be spent. And it'll take a lot of citizen power, a lot of voting power for us to really push back. And that's actually why I'm really pleased that Mary Yost and TC Brown are here with us, so that we can think about, well, what are the kinds of letters to the editor, op-eds that we can do so that we can explain to our community why it is we care about this issue. And I'm so sorry, I don't know how to say your name. Is Wahinya? Is that right?
Well, Catherine, if I may, I have
please.
one more question that I thought would be interesting. If you can tell us how many counties typically are successful at collecting the goals for any of these ballot campaigns.
Okay, so this is the way that it generally works when you do a citizen initiative. You need to get 44 counties. What you do is you generally pick, between 55 and 60 counties that you're going to try to get the 5% of the gubernatorial vote, right? So what we do know is that, it is an effort, but it's not the kind of thing that's an obstacle to doing a citizen initiative. So typically, between 44 and 60 counties get to that 5% fairly easily.
Okay, thank you.
And Wahinya, am I saying it right?
Yes, you are. That's perfect.
Okay, sorry.
No problem. Don't worry about it. No, you said it perfectly. I just had a question. I came a little late because I was watching the House Government Oversight Committee hearings that were happening right now. Because the vote is happening in next week on Wednesday, that will be too little of a time to try to get anything on any local papers, right, before the vote, right? So I guess would we be planning to kind of get these letters to the editors on the on the chance that they will be voting this out of the House and making it and putting it on the August election, basically?
So yes, so the deadline for the state legislature to approve this to get on the ballot is May 10th. So we do have time to get into newspapers. And certainly, you know, one of the things that they do is they often will have quick turnaround for those really hot issues. So like one of the things that yes, the time is tight. I'm going to encourage us all to get to our computers almost immediately after this session, but there is time to do this. And if in fact we have to have a campaign, we are going to need lots and lots of, you know, voter contact. We're going to need lots and lots of letters to the editor, op-eds, opinion leaders out there talking about how this is a real attack on the Ohio Constitution and Ohio voters, and to vote no, to protect one person, one vote. Any other questions?
Just one more follow-up question real quick. And again, because of the time constraint that we have before it might be voted out of the House next week on Wednesday, along with doing this, I saw a tweet. We had a little space on Twitter with David Pepper and a few other Democratic organizers who were talking about what's going on, and we had a list of phone calls or phone numbers for specific Republican lawmakers in the House that people could try to call, leave a message in their office through their aides if possible, just to let them know that, you know, you're opposed to the August election and you're opposed to HJR1 as well. So that's another thing other people could do. I could try to get the Twitter handle and I could post it in the chat, because it had a few specific legislators, Republicans, who were kind of wavering on the issue. That included someone like Representative Brett Hillier, who was on the House Constitutional Resolution Committee last week. That was last week. He was the only Republican who voted no on
Yes.
HJR1. So someone like that would be a great person for people to try to call in the office, just, you know, leave a passion kind of message, respectful message, obviously, because you can tell they're kind of wavering on the issue. So something like that would be amazing if people could do that, so that they could try to influence this, because if we can defeat this from leaving the House, that would make our lives much easier than having to battle it in August. So that's just what I want to say.
Absolutely. And
yeah.
Let's battle it now. And with that, I'm going to encourage TC and Mary to tell us a little bit about themselves and then help us think through how best to do letters to the editor, op-eds. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. So quickly on our background, because we want to get to the meat of this. So I had 26 years in the media. My last 3 were at the Dispatch as editorial page editor. So I was making decisions about what letters to the editor to run, what op-eds to publish. So I can speak from that. TC?
Yeah, I had about 26 years in daily newspapers, and also taught at Ohio Wesleyan for about 7 years. In 2008, studied social media as a Kiplinger Fellow, and last year ran a national Twitter feed for the union, and added about 8,500 people to followers in about 8 months. So we can help on the social media stuff too, which is really a very powerful platform that we all ought to use to the extent that you can. So yep, that's it.
And the union is part of the Lincoln Project.
Yeah, the union. You're right. Exactly.
So what we were hearing about earlier from Catherine and from Dennis were the messages, but what we're going to talk about are the vehicles to get these messages published in a letter to the editor or an op-ed. What you want to keep in mind with a letter is that it's going to be the shorter, quicker opportunity to get in the paper. You can generally get more letters in the paper than an op-ed because they print more letters. Timing wise, it can be a quick turnaround. But keep in mind that today the Dispatch has already wrapped up their opinion pages for tomorrow. They may have already, as of today, they've probably already finished their opinion pages for Sunday even, because the way that they print today is, it takes a while. They print it in Detroit and then truck it back here. A lot of the papers are printed remotely like that. So we'll talk first about letters to the editor, and to get them published, you have to make it short and very succinct, very to the point. So you could start out a letter to the editor with an opening sentence that would be like something like, Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose is the worst kind of hypocrite. You know, something that can grab people's attention, and then you go from there. You want to keep it under 200 words, if at all possible. You're not going to get a letter printed that is a lot longer than that. So try to keep it, 200 words or less. And you never want to use a form letter. You want to make it in your own words. So if someone is sending something out and says, these are the words to use, just sign your name on it. If a newspaper starts getting a bunch of those, they're not going to print them. They may print one of them, but they're not going to print 25 letters that all say the same thing. They want to see your own wording. And so only one of those kinds of letters is actually going to be printed. You want to link to a specific recent news story or an opinion piece or an action. So if you're going to do that, you want to say, the story in the Dispatch on, and use the date. Don't say yesterday or 2 weeks ago or because that relative date is going to change. But you can mention a particular article, a particular editorial, a particular letter written by somebody else. And that kind of lets the newspaper know that you're a reader, that you actually, are engaging with them as a reader. That's something that they want to see a lot. They will also want your name, your street address, a daytime phone number, and your email address. And we'll share some of these bullet points by email to Catherine after we're done, so that can be shared with all of you. They aren't going to print that information, but they want to be able to contact you to verify that you are who you say you are and that you wrote that letter. And then you want to make sure that you're sending this letter electronically by email. In the body of an email is fine, or as a Word attachment. You can send it that way also. Don't send it as a PDF, because the newspaper is going to want to be able to edit your copy and get it into their electronic system. And it's harder to do that with a PDF. So you want to give it to them either in the body of an email, or as an op-ed document, or as a Word attachment. So you also don't want to send it handwritten. We used to get letters, in the mail, handwritten, and we just, the paper doesn't have the staff anymore to have somebody retype all of that to get it into their system. For the Dispatch, if people are local and that's your interest, you can submit it to an email to letters@dispatch.com. You can also copy the current editorial page. I guess she's actually opinion and community engagement editor, Amelia Robinson. Her email address is ameliarobinson@dispatch.com.
And we can post these links on the comments section too, but I think you're going to share these, right? These documents that we,
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that we're speaking about. So TC, do you want to talk about
Yeah,
op-eds?
so op-eds obviously are longer, and it's, more reasoned commentary. that newspapers take. You're going to argue for or against a particular view on whatever the topic is. And whatever your argument is, you have to make it solid, that there's no doubt about where you stand with the issue. So don't be wishy-washy about your stance. And the newspaper can, they don't necessarily have to accept your op-ed. They have no obligation, and they also have no obligation to let you know if they're going to take it or not. They will reach out, right, if they're going to accept it, because they want to verify you are who you are. And it might also run against opinion from the other side. So like a pro-con type of thing. So it does happen, not always, but it does happen. But op-eds are, they can also take longer to get published because newspapers only run a few of them as compared to the letters. So, here's some tips in terms of getting your op-ed published. As I mentioned a minute ago, you have to make a compelling argument, no doubt on where you stand. You tell in your op-ed why the topic should be of interest to the readers. Why do they care? You can use anecdotes, real or imagined, to explain the impact of the topic. You also want to establish your expertise on the subject matter. So you might include your professional experience or academic degrees and how that qualifies you to comment on a subject. Although, jump in there.
I think that's the big distinguisher between an op-ed and a letter to the editor. Anybody can write a letter to the editor. You don't have to be, any reader of the paper, any concerned citizen. But for an op-ed, you want to have a little bit more of that expertise established.
Exactly. And the other important thing is you have to stick to the length that the newspaper wants. The Columbus Dispatch, Mary tells me, is op-eds are between 400 to 550 words. A good rule of thumb is to aim for about 500 to 600 words. So 500 words, single space is about a page, double space, 2 pages. So, the best way, when I always taught students, is like, just throw everything in your mind out on the page and then go back and make it pretty later and get it down to the 500 word limit or whatever. So, don't hold back. Just get everything on the page and then go and clean it up or get it shorter if you need to. You can link your commentary to a recent news story on the topic or to another commentary on the topic, like maybe the newspaper's own editorials or other op-eds that it has published. And note the headline and publication date for any article or editorial you cite or reference to. It's helpful too, and you should include the URL of any article or editorial you are referencing. At the end of the column, include a biography sentence, note your name, position if relevant, briefly reiterate your competency to comment on the topic at hand. And again, don't send it in, snail mail, send it electronically, an attached Word document. You can look online at the opinion section of any newspaper that you're targeting to figure that out, where you have to send it. We'll send you the links to, and you'll see them in these documents, of where you would do that at the Dispatch and also Amelia. Include your name, street address, daytime phone number, and email address. That your op-ed won't be published, but will allow the paper to contact. I'm sorry, that information won't be published, but that allows a paper to contact you to verify that you are the one that wrote the column and sent it in. Don't send a PDF. It's really hard and difficult to edit PDFs, and newspapers often will edit your column for length, style, etc. You want to do the rest of it?
Yeah, the only other thing to add, I think, would be to make sure you include a photograph with an op-ed column, and it can be in color. When it appears, in print, it may be black and white, but go ahead and give them color. It'll show up that way online. And it's okay. I wouldn't try to follow up on a letter to the editor. They're either going to print your letter or not. And I see we have a question in the chat about why some get published and some don't. I would say for an op-ed, it's okay to try to follow up with the editor and find out if they're going to use it. As far as why some letters get published and some don't, I think when there are lots that come in on the same topic, the paper is going to look for who says it best, you know, who says it maybe shorter and more to the point so that they can print more of those letters. And it's, you know, it's a little bit of a crapshoot. It's, you know, but when lots of letters are coming in, even if you don't get published, you're still helping the cause because it's communicating to the paper that this is something that their readers really care about, and that they will try to print a representative sample of letters when a lot of them are coming in. So even if yours doesn't get published, they're going to print something else on that topic when lots of people are saying the same thing.
So, and then once your letter or your op-ed is published, use your social media platforms. I can't stress that enough. You share your web links for both of them. Use every platform you can. You might even encourage people that follow you to reshare it. You know, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever. Use them all. Don't be shy about it, because those platforms are very powerful, as you probably already know.
Can you talk a little bit about like Twitter, how, you know, you've got something published, then how do you use Twitter?
Well, you just, if you get something published, you know, it's good to come up sometimes with like some kind of, you know, punchy remark about it, or take, and you can do this with other people's op-eds and LTEs, you know, find something that you think is powerful, you know, a short sentence, a few words, and, you know, add that at the top with the link to the article or op-ed itself. If you know, if it's an op-ed, chances are there's going to be a picture anyway, but you know, the thing that gets attention on Twitter often are visual. The things that are visual, and you know, it might be harder to do on an op-ed or something, but you know, you can do a lot of different things with that, and the more give it some thought, and the more you can get something that strikes a chord, that is short. You don't want to go too long. You have a limit anyway on Twitter. You know, the more you can get something that's punchy and gets attention, the more notice you'll get. And again, you don't want to overdo it, but sometimes it's okay to say, hey, you know, please share this. Again, I wouldn't do that all the time, but you know, it depends on what you're doing.
Or maybe say something like, I couldn't agree more, and then include, you know, the link to the particular op-ed. So I just sent one that is a link to the op-ed that Mike Curtin had in the Akron Beacon Journal yesterday. So you could grab that link, throw it in Twitter or on Facebook and say, hey, I believe in this too. This is important, you know, whatever sounds like you. And I saw some questions. Michelle is asking, is it better to submit shorter letters in general under the word limit? And I would say yes, absolutely. Because if you can say something in, you know, 3 sentences that somebody else is taking 30 to say, the editor is, you know, chances are going to want to do it shorter and get more letters into the paper. I was just looking to the chat. Yes, and I mentioned, you know, when you call your legislators that, you know, you saw a particular op-ed opinion that you want to call to their attention. So I hope we've left plenty of time for questions and covered what you were hoping to hear about. How can we answer any questions?
Well, I'm going to start with this question. What's the biggest mistake that we should all avoid?
I think form letters. I think, trying to send a letter to the editor that they've already seen 30 times is not going to help anybody. So putting something in your own advice or in your own words.
And I was going to say, one of the things that can get confusing is like Dennis gives this advice about the message guidance. Do you have suggestions for like how to take the message guidance and then turn it into your own thing?
I think one thing you can do is focus on, he talked about the 3 different prongs of the message. Focus on just one of them that calls the most to you, and say why that particular thing is important to you, that you're concerned about a minority being able to rule the state, that you're concerned about, what was his phrase, the extreme politicians making decisions for all of us, but just, take one of those message points and say why it's important to you to fight.
Well, yeah,
that.
tap into your emotions. I mean, does this stuff piss you off? Tap into that. And like I said, your first draft, you're the only one seeing it. So, just let it all out and, share it with family, friends, whatever, see what they think. And then you can always go back in and clean it up a little bit.
I don't know if you saw that Alan Johnson was saying he's going to take Mary's advice, but he's going to avoid yours.
Yeah, that figures.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Alan about that later. I think another mistake is being too wordy. People sometimes they think the more words they use, the smarter they look, and I think that maybe the opposite is true. That someone who can get their point across in fewer words has more power than someone who's going to take several pages to get to the same place in the end.
Yeah, and if you're struggling, I mean, you might even think about how would I tell my friend this, that this bothers me, and how would I tell them that, and then just write that, write like you talk.
So we had one question that was from Carol, and it was really kind of the specifics about, like, does it matter what font you use? Are there things like that you recommend?
The main thing you're going for is clarity. So don't use a fancy font. Most of us, if you're sending it by email or just putting it in the body of an email, you're not going to be changing the font on that, but clarity. So if you want to use bigger type, that's great. If you want to use, a very straightforward font, that it doesn't matter. They're not going to be looking at it and say, oh, can you believe the font they used on this? They're not going to say that. So you're going for clarity in the communications. I see a question: how do newspaper articles cross over to political influence? I don't know if, Robert, if you want to clarify on that or raise your hand. I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Okay. Yeah. This goes to the newspaper, but the people who have the ability to do something are in Columbus. So how does that cross over? I mean, how is this an effective tool given the other tools that we have available, like communicating directly to them?
Well, lawmakers are from all over Ohio. So, for instance, Curtin's editorial in the Akron Beacon Journal ran today or yesterday, I don't remember which, but so, there's that. Lawmakers do, most of them hopefully do tune into their local media. So I know Mike has written a number of editorials in newspapers all over Ohio, and there's a method to that, what he's doing, because these guys represent the entire state. So yeah, they all come here and work in Columbus, but they live back in their districts. So, you know, that hopefully has an impact. Sometimes you wonder, but that's the hope.
Right. Yeah, I think they, you know, they're seeing what's being published, and hopefully it makes them uncomfortable when they see a lot of people coming out and speaking against things. And it's, you know, everything is another drip of water. You've got the articles that are being written about, you know, former governors that are all, you know, coming together to oppose this. You've got, you know, commentary of the, you know, the newspaper's own editorial board. It's all just, you know, cumulative to keep beating that drum.
Mary?
And that matters. I mean, so that's, you know, that obviously that's why we're doing this. You know, the more people that do this, you know, the more notice, you know, the drumbeat keeps going. And, you know, these guys are not immune to that. I mean, they get it. That's why it's important to keep the beats going.
Thank you.
Mary, this is Alan, and yes, I believe every word you say. This question might be actually more directed at Catherine, because I was talking with one of our former journalistic colleagues, and we were concerned about what happens. Let's assume it does get on the ballot, this issue for August. Is the money going to be there to oppose it? Because, you know, the other side will have lots of money, and that's a real concern for me.
So this is what I do know. Right now, we struggle having influence at the state legislature, right? And that means that all the different folks that are, whether they're working on reproductive rights, or whether they're working on redistricting reform, or whether they're thinking, for that matter, you know, one of the things I have always in the back of my head is, wouldn't it be great to do a ballot measure about dark money? Like, all of the different folks, whether they're working on minimum wage, there are tons of different constituencies that are going to focus on defeating this. And I think there are a couple different things that we have going for us. You know, clearly we're going to need money. Like, clearly we're going to need to do political, you know, advertisements. But one of the strengths that we do have is we have good organizations with canvases. You know, voter to voter contact makes an enormous difference. We also have the ability to work with all sorts of other folks to really highlight the challenge. Now, how can I put this? I would so much rather stop this in the legislature than fight and win. And we would. The thing is, I really believe we'll win, because this is an attack on the voters. And this is an attack on the Ohio Constitution. But I want to remind you, you know, of 2011, you know, when we, you know, basically I'm getting into issue 2 of 2011, or Senate Bill 5. Well, we stopped that bill, but when we won, we were where we started. So for me, I want us to stop it in the legislature, because what I want to do is I want us to get our money and our people resources focused on redistricting reform. And I want the reproductive rights folks to be able to focus on their campaign, not on this attack. And will we have enough money? We'll come up with it. It'll be a challenge. We'll come up with it. Any other questions? Or Ellen, do you want to jump in and give any suggestions yourself as a former newsman?
I missed the first part of what TC and Mary were saying, and despite what I said earlier, I even believe TC. But I've been out of the business per se for 5 years now. But, and I used to, as Mary and TC would probably agree, kept my opinions to myself as a journalist, but I have no such hesitation now. So I'm perfectly willing to put myself out there, and anything I can do to help, I will be happy to jump in to help as well, because I really detest what I'm seeing now in the legislature with this issue. It's just, and I've known, like some of you have known DeWine for a long time, and while I disagree with his politics, I always liked him personally, but he says he's going to sign this bill, and that just really disgusts me. So I don't know. I'm going to do what I can, and I retweet a lot, and I put things out there, and so whatever I can do, I'm going to do to try and get the word out, because this is really disaster. And Mike Curtin, I worked for Mike Curtin for a long time, and he was my boss and my friend. And boy, if there's a more straight shooter on the planet than Mike Curtin, and I don't know him. And you can take what he says to the bank. He's well researched. He's very thoughtful, and I'm just so glad he's out there beating the drum.
Absolutely. All right. Well, any final words, Mary and TC?
I don't, hopefully this isn't an exercise in frustration, that people will actually get published. We're happy to help, where we can. And, we just wish everybody the best. Just keep writing, keep sending it in, something will get published.
What she said.
And on that note, we are going to send a follow-up with the recording. You'll also get the slides. You'll get some bullet points. So you're going to get all the tips. And I just wanted to say a big thank you to Mary Yost, a big thank you to TC Brown. I was going to say thank you to Dennis Willard. Thank you to Alan Johnson, and a big thank you to the folks that were asking questions. I think it makes a big difference. I learn better once we have a bunch of questions and more of a discussion, and I really appreciate that. All right. And the other thing I want to highlight, y'all are not alone. We're in this together. And if you were struggling, when we send out an email, let me know, we want to be helpful. So if you are struggling with, your letter to the editor or an op-ed, we are here for you. All right. And on that note, thank you much. Everybody have a good afternoon. See y'all soon. Oh, see you at the State House on May 3rd.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.